I said a couple days ago that because there has been so much drama that has happened in the past week, that I would just lump it all in one video instead of just, consistently covering it each day. Because as this channel has went on for a couple months, I've started to realize that I don't necessarily like talking about drama as much compared to, actual achievements, and that's why if you look at my first month of uploading to this month, there is a steep decline in the amount I cover, and it's why I've switched to covering a bunch of events at once rather than just one per video. Because even if there is a drama, it means that I can just, have it in a video that already has 6 other really cool achievements that kind of cancels it out and makes it a bit more positive of a viewing experience. However, this past week has had so much of it that I can't really, mask it in with a bunch of other achievements. So I thought I just want to cover all of it in one video. We're just gonna do it here and get them all out the way. Now, I'm only gonna be covering the biggest dramas, or at least the ones that are the most impactful. There has been a bunch of small petty ones as well, but honestly, giving them attention isn't really that necessary, considering the scope of some of the other ones we have here, so I'm just going to be covering the very impactful ones, and we're going to start off with the least impactful one, but it kind of links into a bit more of a serious one. We're going to start off with the Purgatory team, because as you know, there was a bunch of drama with Aquamarine that started 6 days ago. I have covered Aquamarine before when this released, obviously, and while I think a lot of the drama maybe, leaked into that video, it was mostly just talking about the level being out now and the fact that it exists rather than covering all the drama that was happening. But we're gonna cover it here because a lot of people dislike this level, especially some people who are kind of tied with the level. They have some opinions to do with how it was managed. Aquamarine is a level that has existed for a while now, and it was basically a reimagining of the idea that Cuatrocientos brought in. I don't necessarily know if it was a sequel officially, but it basically just carries the same idea, a very easy, slow pre-drop, and then you've got the 1.99 circles effect with impossible gameplay. And a lot of people like this level, actually. It had quite a big fan base, and because of that, people wanted it rated. However, a level at this quality probably isn't getting a rate. So Cuatrocientos had to have a massive redecoration project to get it rate-worthy, so this was in need of that as well. And so, the players Cincos and Ren241, who you definitely know, decided to make a remixed version of the level. This was done so that it could get a rate, so it was rate-worthy, and it actually did end up getting verified. We can see here that Seals verified it, and then it actually got a first victor in the form of Rose, and as you can see, it's been sat on the unrated demon list for a while. It sadly hasn't gotten a rate. It has gotten quite a few sends in its history, however, RobTop has just not rated it, whether he hasn't seen it yet, or he's just declined the idea of doing so. And that's where we get into talking about the drama that unfolded, because the player Alex, who is the creator of the original Aquamarine, decided to make a post after seeing this version that the Purgatory released, and their string of messages on Twitter reads, "I just woke up to this. Over a year ago, I cancelled working with the Purgatory on an Aquamarine redeco due to disagreements. I am the original creator. I had no idea that this was being made at all, and it makes me concerned that the team is borderline trying to steal the level." So yeah, the Purgatory probably should have, asked for permission to make this. Maybe if it was a lesser scoped project, then you wouldn't necessarily need that, but this is a complete redecoration mega project that they hope to have it verified as a very, very hard level on the list and rated, so in that case, you should probably ask for permission. It then says, in case people forgot, I had already completed an official redeco of the level with Ren that I was satisfied with. Even if others didn't like it as much, I thought I would finally be done with the level at this point, but it seems that it refuses to stop plaguing me. And if that wasn't obvious, Cinco is Alex, by the way. What makes me concerned about stealing is the Purgatory are mostly known for remaking pre-existing popular levels. Talking with Phantom in the past gave me the impression that he completely prioritized making sure that levels were popular and rate-worthy. Now, I don't know how true that statement is, because over the past week we've been seeing the Purgatory decide to pick up decoration projects for very unknown levels. They're basically finding layouts and then asking permission to give them a decoration, from what I can see. So those are a bit more original and they don't really care for popularity, but all of the major levels that the Purgatory has made, especially a ton of them for earlier on, are all redecoration remake projects. They're not original stuff. Continuing on with the message here, this mindset seems to be apparent as this level has been showcased with the exact same title and absolutely zero impression that is unofficial, despite the fact that I specifically mentioned I would only appreciate unofficial remakes from now on. Now, in the description of Aquamarine, the new Purgatory showcase, it does say that it's unofficial decoration. It can still be rated, don't worry. I don't know if that was edited in or not, but even so, it does exist, right? It does say it's unofficial, but I'm a bit more unsure on the it can still be rated though thing, because we've seen certain creators endorse levels as official works, and anything that's an unofficial remake or re-inspiration of the level doesn't end up getting rated, so that's not always the case. Continuing on, I have no gripes with the level itself, or Loogi even, who has done a good job at making a coherent mega collab. Even if I don't like the decoration myself, I am just disappointed and upset that throughout the entire creating process, the team kept it completely secret from me. Now, Loogi has a bit more serious drama that we'll get to a bit later on, but yeah, this kind of proves that it's not the level inherently that's the issue, it's the way that its creation was, brought about. I mentioned that in my video. The actual level on paper is very good. It's just the things that, led up to it and the way it was handled, which is the drama part of this. The level is riddled with the logo of the Purgatory team, even in places where it does not make sense within the context of the original level at all, as if the team is truly trying to give the impression that this is now their level. Now, I don't think they're trying to give the impression that this is their level, because they do this in all of their stuff, which is a gripe that I have, but it's not just this level, and they've done it with other remakes that are very popular levels. I don't think that's what they're trying to do. I think they're just very obsessed with the branding of themselves, and that on their own would be fine, but I feel like it's in conjunction with this. Not only that, but my name is basically a backdrop compared to everyone else's in the end screen, despite having made the original level. They never mentioned Cursed, Taika, or Scorpion at all, who all helped create the original Aquamarine or Ren for the official version. That is the thing I have the gripe with. Ren made the official version of Aquamarine, and for this Purgatory project to not even list the name Ren is kinda crazy, and also, yeah, not only is the name a backdrop original by Cincos, but they specifically changed the hue of it. They made it more dim so that it would be seen less, which is just kind of scummy to do. And honestly, here, I'm gonna take a bit of accountability here. When I was verifying base down low, I dropped it, so it doesn't matter now. I had my text slightly brighter than everything else in the end screen, and I take full accountability. I shouldn't have done that. I think at some point I reverted it anyways, but I just want to lay it out here because I can't really criticize this when I'm doing the reversal myself. So yeah, I was in the wrong there, but this one I feel like is a lot more serious because it's a more well-known level by a mile. It's the original creator of the level that also worked with Ren on the official version, and you're basically not even, mentioning them at all. I would expect that to have its own little section in the end screen, not conjoined with the Loogi and, the Purgatory's part in the end screen. And even with that, it's in tiny text. I am talking with both Loogi and Phantom now, but I feel this was important to post about while the level is just starting to blow up. This kind of behavior is not something that should be accepted, and it makes me concerned for how the Purgatory handles levels as a whole. So that is pretty much the first part of the drama, the stuff that I think is, the least interesting or not interesting, but the least notable, because it just revolves around a level, and it's not even that deep. The creator even says that the level, is fine. They're fine with it. It's just the credit issue, which can be changed. I'm sure after all of this, the Purgatory might think about it a bit better and, give a bit more credit there when it's verified. But the host of this level is Loogi, and there's been some, a bit more concerning stuff regarding around Loogi. So this is DMs from a player called Aquamarine, who was basically talking to another player, NXH. I'm not gonna try and pronounce the name, I think I got corrected before, but is the creator of Artemis 13, the verification that Zoink's doing. He recently got 70%, that level. He's kind of getting in hot water right now, along with Loogi, because of these messages. From what I can tell, these are all legit. I've seen this going around way less than everything else, so maybe something happened that just hasn't been showing up in my feed that resolved this, but from what I can tell, these are true messages. They don't seem edited at all. And you can see here that this is basically a clip of Loogi saying the N-word, and also just, saying it in DMs, or not DMs, but in Discord. It is adding a bot, but why are you... Like, why do we even have this in the first place and we're reacting with it? And here's another reply in a YouTube comment section calling him racist, and then that's his response, and I'm gonna be real here. It's not the nicest comment, if we take aside the context, which we don't know, but I feel like if you have a message like this, just don't respond to it. I don't think this needed a response, especially the one that Loogi did. It's a bit weird. And Aquamarine goes to say that these are all from January of this year. So, very much not that old. And then he also goes on to say he's a bunch of other things, which we don't have evidence on, so I'm not going to, trust that or go into that. I'm gonna act like those didn't happen because we don't have the evidence for it. At least I don't. But it's NXH's reaction to this that's kind of the weird thing, okay? He says, I mean, bro, what does you telling me this do? And then Aquamarine says, so you don't surround yourself with bad people? And then he says he's not a bad person. And then Aquamarine says it makes you aware of what kind of person Loogi is. And then NXH just tries to dodge the question. He's trying to dodge talking about it for some reason. He says, you can leave my server, by the way, if you want. Aquamarine says, why would I do that? And he says, K, stop messaging me. At first, I was thinking maybe there's some cut, DMs here. This is, cherry-picking certain messages. But no, it says 1:37 p.m. here and 1:37 p.m., throughout all of this. So this was pretty instantaneous. So he's just trying to dodge. He gives evidence to why Loogi's a bad person. He's just, warning him. And he's just, asking him to leave his server. He's saying, the way he words it makes it sound like he thinks that Aquamarine is being aggressive to him and, being negative to him, but he's just telling him, yo, maybe you shouldn't associate with a guy who's like this. And then Aquamarine says it'll be fine if it's 2017, but bro, this year, which makes sense because I'm under the impression that people can change, but I feel like we need to give a certain deadline to when, we can think about, letting them back in to speaking to you. Obviously, it depends on the situation of what they've done. Obviously, if it's a PDF file, you're never gonna let them back in. But if it's a mindset like being racist, I feel like someone can change, or being homophobic. I've seen people that think that way, and they've completely 180'd over the course of years. But I wouldn't leave it to 2025, right? Like he says, it'd be fine if it was 2017, but this year. And also, that could have been his humor before. And then NXT says he hasn't done anything in my server, so he's fine. Am I just weird for thinking, what do you mean? What do you mean just because he's in your server, it's fine? If these things turn out true, I don't necessarily want him in my server. And then Aquamarine says, I guess, that's wild, just saying though, I don't know, I wouldn't be effing with him that much. And then NXH says, I would appreciate not hearing this stuff. Again, we're trying to, dodge it. And he says, because why would I want to know this? Maybe that's because there's a bad actor in your server, and you probably want to act upon that? I don't know, just my guess. And then it goes, bro, be mature about this, we're having an honest conversation. Why are you still DMing me? Because you're acting like someone that just got called out for doing something insane, which is what I said. He's I don't know, he's seeming like, it looks like he thinks that Aquix is being aggressive with him, when he's just telling you, you know, you have a bad actor in your server, you might want to do something about it. Nothing is happening between you and me, this is just about Loogi and what he's done. He said yeah, and I said stop, and you kept yapping, please stop messaging me. And then Aquix says, okay, I'll stop talking about Loogi. And yeah, if it was any other conversation, sure, if he said, okay, stop messaging me, then yeah, you should stop messaging. But this is, you know, talking about a bad actor in your server with some serious evidence, and you're just kind of swatting this away. I feel like you should at least, you know, consider it and not trying to say, you know, I haven't seen him done anything, so he's fine in my server. Again, this is a more serious example, but let's say I had a PDF file in my server, I wouldn't go, oh, well, I haven't seen him done anything, so I guess he's legit for now, I guess he's fine. No, you would just instantly, you know, take action. I recently remembered that Loogi's actually in my server, so I'm actually gonna send this out. Here's the comment I put underneath the ban. Again, if this all comes out as false, which it could be because I haven't seen many people talk about this anymore, then I will revert the ban. I will be wrong, and I'll put a pinned message in the comments of this video and a community post saying, you know, I was wrong, this was all false, but by the looks of things, it is real. And that is all for the Loogi and Aquamarine situation. And that second part, I haven't really seen much people talk about, so I thought I should probably comment on it. The only other thing I know is that I believe that Loogi did get banned off the unrated demon list for one of those things, or so I've heard. But again, if that comes out as false, it seems very, very true. But if it comes out as false, then yeah, I will put a community post and pin a comment under this video, you know, correcting it, however much I need to correct. But from what I've seen, it does look legit, so I'm gonna go ahead with what I've done. And now we're gonna get to the one you've probably been waiting for, the Cuatrocientos drama, because he has had a couple messages, well, more like a lot of messages leaked that kind of paint him as not the best person, and he already wasn't that liked because of, you know, the AI thumbnails here, but these messages are a bit more serious than something as light as AI thumbnails. Not saying AI thumbnails are good just because the scope of this, it's the lesser thing here. So basically, this document is translated into English. I'll be using this one for your guys' sake because the majority of my audience is English. And as you can see here, I think you know why I'm not going to be reading any of these messages out, but you can see that Cuatrocientos has, you know, been saying some messages that aren't exactly the most appropriate. Using a certain word that is also not very appropriate. And originally, I thought that all of these were really old stuff. You can see here, there's a message from 2023, but nope, turns out a lot of this is from 2025, so it's from, you know, a year ago to maybe even less than a year ago, some of this stuff. That is, you know, probably not acceptable. This is all done in a Spanish kind of server for only Spanish players, so that's why I feel like a lot of this has not been brought up until now. And this entire document is just filled with this stuff. This part especially, it gives the links as well. I'm not gonna go on them, but you can, you can search up these links and go to yourself, or click on them from the document. And, you know, it's true. He said that in, you know, his escape room video. Obviously, this section is unlisted now, but he says, I accidentally said it. No, you didn't accidentally say it. That word doesn't sound, you know, anything like what escape room sounds like in Spanish. He just literally just said the N-word. I don't know. Like, I don't know why people think that's funny. Again, this one is from 2023, so normally I would say, you know, maybe he's changed. It was just, you know, childish humor. A lot of, you know, young teens, or maybe you're not even a teen, I don't know, they feel like the need to say more edgy stuff. This isn't even edgy, it's just a straight up N-word. But no, you can see 2025, he's still doing this stuff. The way he words stuff, it makes it sound like he's joking about, which he probably is joking, you know, from the way he's saying stuff, but I just genuinely don't get how people find, you know, this sense of humor funny, because half the time it isn't even humor. It just comes off as being racist for the fun of it. Sure, he might not mean half the things he says, but I don't know why. Why is this funny to some people? I will never understand. Now, the document brings up AI thumbnails, which I kind of find funny. This is, nothing to do with the main drama that's going about. I just think it's so much less serious than the other ones, but also it makes me bring up another thing about the AI thumbnails. There's a message here basically asking, which version of the thumbnail is better, which, shows he just genuinely doesn't care. I thought he was doing this because he thought it was funny. I believe he said that at some point. But no, he, is asking for more. He's, continuing to post these even after this document released and got popular. He still was using AI thumbnails. He even changed Flame Wall's verification video to an AI thumbnail. The rest of the document is basically just talking about the Spanish server he was in general, because a lot of the people there seem like-minded and were doing similar things that are definitely wrong, which again kind of proves the point that that's just their humor. They see that as a joke, and, just because they're joking doesn't make it fine. I don't get why people can say that stuff and find it funny, and for the amount of people that, think that dark humor, saying the N-word, haha, so funny, there is some people who will genuinely be impacted by that and will take it personally. You shouldn't be doing that in a public server. Not even you shouldn't be doing it in DMs, okay? Let alone doing it in a public server. And then we have the SwtCyn drama, which has been blowing up recently, and I need to cover it here because I didn't get any of the major stuff in, my recommended feed. No one showed it to me, no one submitted it in my news server or anything, so I just thought that these tweets were the only thing we had when these three were the only ones that existed, and I thought, it's probably something private that's to do with how the mod system's handled, the reason why SwtCyn resigned from their mod status. So that was it, okay? I thought, good luck to whatever they do now. I don't really know too much, but, this happened, they resigned, so I might as well cover it. It turns out there's a lot more to this, and for the most part, what we've seen, this was not, just resigning. This was more of a straight-up removal from being a mod. It was a demotion, and SwtCyn is trying to hide that fact. As much as I would like to have waited to August 30th to roll around, that being my third year as a mod, it was about time I resigned from the team due to reasons that I don't feel necessary to speak upon. Now, the I don't feel necessary to speak upon thing in question got leaked. So this is what it was. I'll give you a bit of time to, read this and process this, but I warn you, going forward, compared to everything else, I feel like this is a lot more of a controversial topic, just to the way people are divided on this, so I'm going to try and be careful with my wording here, but I will try and explain the situation and still give my thoughts. SwtCyn said that I had stated that even though I highly disagree with it, I see good people as good people. You can believe whatever you want, even if I disagree, no questions asked, but the moment you try to shove it down my throat and demand respect, try and force me to believe in what you believe in, I lose all respect. That last part of the message gets thrown around so much when most people in communities do not do that. It's such an overreaction. And some of the stuff here that's said is complete nonsense, but I just want to talk about something real quick. Now, I'm gonna have to word my words very carefully here because I know what my comment section is gonna look like when we get to this part, but let me just set something straight, okay? My perspective on something is, at least when it comes to this situation, is when you're playing a game, usually certain games have certain communities. And usually, there are some games that have a very strong ideology or opinion on a certain topic, and there are other games that have the completely opposite, take on the same things. And Geometry Dash is a game that's very built upon the queer side of that mindset. There are so many important members of the community that are queer, or LGBTQ, whatever you want to call it. And that isn't exactly the most obscure fact. It's pretty obvious if you've been in the community for more than a day. The problem is SwtCyn knows this, and SwtCyn decided to become a mod. While their views on this topic might be, approved in other games or other communities, and I think SwtCyn very much knows that this line of thinking is not gonna end well with the GD community. So I genuinely don't understand why they would still, go through with trying to have the responsibility of being a mod. Right here I'm on a document that he has also, posted on his Twitter, so you can go look at this if you want, because I'm only gonna cover, certain segments of it here. If you want the full thing, it's there, but I just want to, kind of talk about how I don't really understand the mindset the SwtCyn has. Because from the post before, it seems like SwtCyn is, still trying to be buddies and friends with everyone. But I don't get how in any world, you wouldn't instantly, crack the idea that it wouldn't turn out well. His whole thing in that message was saying, I respect you as a person, I might not agree with your beliefs, but, I still want to be friends. Which I feel like maybe, if he's thinking a certain way, then he has good intentions with that. But if you, straight up don't agree with something as, serious as someone's, sexuality, or how they present themselves, or their gender, or whatever, then I think it's obvious why they wouldn't want to be friends with you. And even if you're hiding that, I feel like that's why you shouldn't exactly try and step up to a mod position if that's your beliefs, when a lot of the community, is queer in one way or another. Because it's breaking their trust. As a mod, you're supposed to be trusted, and if, you dislike something down to the core as that about someone, then they're just not really gonna feel welcomed in the community. And looking through this document, I will admit, it looks like SwtCyn does, actually kind of feel sorry for this. Obviously, I doubt his beliefs are ever gonna change, but it does seem like he was, trying to be friends with people, and then this kind of, this slipped up, and then it all leaked, and then, this is what's happened. But something I don't even get was at the bottom, SwtCyn said, but I was actually in a gay relationship at the time. And what do you mean it simply slipped your mind that gay relationships were a part of the topic? I don't think that is too hard to forget. It just doesn't really add up. I don't really get this section at all. And there's a bunch of DMs here. The actual full conversation from that leaked message is here, and from the messages, it seems like SwtCyn, is understanding. But I think, at the end of the day, SwtCyn just, really messed up, dropped the ball with that message. And I think the comment I agree with most is this one who was, talking to SwtCyn in DMs, who said, "This situation is really disappointing overall. Even if you didn't have bad intentions, this was done the worst way possible, and I believe it's very understandable for Black Message, that is the person that SwtCyn was talking to in the leaked DM, to feel uncomfortable with the situation and other moderators questioning what happened there. I understand that everyone has their own beliefs and standpoints about things, but I feel someone who has to engage with this many people on a daily basis as moderator should be able to put these to the side for that moment." I completely agree with that message. Basically, my thought is what that comment says there. People have their own beliefs. SwtCyn is clearly strong-minded with, his thoughts on the LGBTQ community, but at a position like this, as a moderator for a game as big as this, with a community as queer as this, you need to learn to keep that to yourself. And even if you do that, still, consider why you're a moderator in the first place if these are your beliefs compared to the vast majority of people that your position revolves around. I'm not saying it's impossible to be friends with people with opposite mindsets, because I am friends with people with very different views from what I have, but you have to realize that some people are not gonna be comfortable being friends with you when you are that different-minded to them. Again, if you want to have a stronger opinion on the situation, please read this document. Because I only explained a bit of it, there's more stuff here, but I am just summarizing it, and it seems like SwtCyn realizes he's in the wrong here, but it's kind of hard to, give opinions and give my take on these kind of situations, because, this is just the way they see the world. This is, his beliefs. But yeah, I think it was totally understandable and the right decision for him to be kicked from the moderating team. Now, I originally thought it was, just him resigning, but it practically was a ban. Pretty much every moderator said, yo, you should resign. It wasn't really a choice of SwtCyn. This was, done after all of this, so it practically was a ban. He was wording the original tweet in a way that, it looked like he was trying to escape from the situation and not take the blame, just say, I was resigning. But, yeah. I mean, just read this. If you want to know more, read all of this. And lastly, there was drama revolving around injury, which is a very difficult level. It was revolving around, the verification rights of it. I'm not going to say any names, but you can look into that if you are, truly interested in figuring out all that drama. But I've been requested not to cover it, and due to, being respectful, I won't cover it. And also, it is honestly the least important drama out of anything I've mentioned here. If it was here, it would be the first thing I showed, because it was not really too much, borderline petty. I'm pretty sure it's been resolved now anyways, so there wouldn't even be a reason to cover it. But yeah, that's why it's not going to be here. But yeah, thanks for watching all the way through. Don't have much more to say now. I know that this is probably going to be a controversial video just because of the stuff I'm covering. And it's kind of hard to word some stuff to, not offend anyone with some of these things, but that's all I have to say. Thanks for watching, and peace.